Hi everyone. So I'm going to talk a bit about building multilingual websites in Drupal 8. Just out of interest, how many people here have done multilingual sites in Drupal? Alright, and then Drupal 8? Okay, so you'll probably know all of this already. But anyway, so a bit about me first. So my Drupal journey started as a hobbyist. I used to do it for fun in my free time, and then I decided, hey, all these other people are doing it as part of their job, why can't I? So 10 years ago I set up Anartech, and now there's 20 of us based out of Ireland, and we just do Drupal. So my background is being a backend developer. These days I manage and run the company, so I don't get to do too much in the way of development, but yeah, I still get my hands dirty now and again. And I'm also founder of the Drupal Ireland Association, member of the security team, member of the Drupal Governance Task Force. Way too many projects for me to count, which is why there's an X to that, and I forgot to update the slide when I got onto Wi-Fi. I maintain something like 40 projects on Drupal.org, probably badly, because at this stage I don't have time. And I also write all the questions for Trivia Night. So, very briefly, background. So, where the inspiration for this presentation came from was a site that we did for an Irish company called Lambia Nutritionals, who are actually a global leader in providing nutritional products to other companies. So they wanted a website that would sell, well, not sell because it wasn't e-commerce, but promote their services, their goods, their solutions in every region and in lots of different languages. So there are 4 different regions on the site: EMEA, North America, South America, and Asia Pacific, in 13 distinct different languages. So that's where I learned a lot about multilingual in Drupal 8. So this is a brief summary of what I'm going to try and cover today. I do have a lot of slides, so I'm going to be talking fast. But you can always get me with questions later on. So, first, getting set up. These days in Drupal 8, you just need 4 modules. In Drupal 7, you needed I18N and all these other modules to make it work. I have yet to do a site where I don't need all 4. So you need the language module to first give you the ability to have more than one language on the site. That's straightforward, grand. And content translation, you need that to be able to translate your content. But you need configuration translation module to translate things like views and other things. So yeah, you probably need that one too. And interface translation to translate the built-in strings that come with modules. So I haven't been able to find a use case where I only needed 1 or 2 of those modules. So adding a language is fairly easy. You just go along to the language page. You can add your language on, so you can select from the drop-down. So you can choose English, Spanish, Norwegian, whatever it is. We were adding custom languages, so that's also an option. And that's where we added ENGB and ENUS and ENMX to get the different variations in our localization project. And then stream is too long. This is a snapshot of all the different languages that we had. But you can see what it is there. Language negotiation then. Just when a user comes to your website, what's the language that they're going to get? Now, this project was a localization project, so if I came to it from, say, Ireland in Europe, then I would get English Europe version. But if I came to it and I'm an English-speaking user in America, I'd get a different copy, different content on the website. So we ported a module from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 for this, called IP Language Negotiation, which allows you to find out their IP address, and then go, well, what country are you in, and then serve a language based on that in their browser settings. So I've mentioned localization a few times already. For me, there's a distinction between translating a website and localizing a website, and I just wanted to explain that to make sure that we're all on the same page. So for me, translation, if you're translating a website, you have the exact same copy in multiple languages. So if in Ireland, we would do translation a fair bit. So it's a requirement in Ireland that every public sector website is in Irish and English. So the copy doesn't change, the message doesn't change when you're looking at it in English and looking at it in Irish. It's a direct translation. You just send it to a translation company, you get it back, you put it in. That's the way it is. Localization is when you actually are changing the message, changing the content, changing the imagery based on the market that you're in. So it diverges. And this is particularly important if you're using paragraphs, and I'll come to that later on. You need to know what you're doing. Adding translations hasn't really changed. I don't have GIFs, but I did have one cat. So in Drupal 7, this would have been entity translation rather than what came with Drupal core, which is content translation. So here you have one entity, but you sort of have many different facets. Each language is a different interpretation or view onto it, I guess. Whereas in Drupal 7, the core version was to have a different node for each one and then link them together. So I am not going to go through with this or into this in much detail because you've all done the multilingual site by the looks of it. Enabling a translation for your entity is straightforward. In Drupal 8, you go there to the regional language section, you enable translation for the different type of entities that you want. When you check these boxes though, you then get to, it expands and it shows, say, the content types if you chose content. And then you check the box for your content and it expands and it shows the field and you choose which fields that you want to translate. And then you do the same for taxonomy terms and your other entities. Just to quickly show you. You see that? So this is what it looks like. But then as you have more content types and more taxonomies and more fields, this page gets really, really long. And it's never ending. So I think if there's any UX designers in the room, this page needs some attention. Menus, oh, more cats. So menus, again, isn't fairly straightforward. It's another type of entity. You can translate that. The one gotcha that not so much got me, but got the translators, and we've given them training, was they're used to going to the entity, so they're going to the node, going to the translate tab, and then translating. They did this for menus. They went to the menus, saw their links, and then hit translate menu. What that actually allows you to translate is the title and the administration summary, not the actual links in the menu. You actually have to hit the drop down beside each link and click translate there. So that was just one little gotcha. Also, and again, this is probably more pertinent to localization sites. When you translate a menu link, it's available for all, okay, let me backtrack. If you want to have a different menu for the French website versus the German website, and you delete one of the menu items from the French one, you've also deleted it from the German one. So watch out for that. If you actually want to have different menus, you have to create separate menu containers for them to live in. So that was really painful with 13 different languages and lots of links in each menu. So paragraphs. I'm guessing most people here have used paragraphs module or do? Good. So paragraphs module out of the box supports what I call translation. So they recommend that you don't translate the paragraph field, you translate the paragraph bundle. Is that right? Yes. So when you translate the English to Norwegian node, you don't tick the box you don't tick the field and the node and that big long list of checkboxes I showed you earlier. You tick the bundle at the top, which means that you have one node ID in English and Norwegian, and then you've got one paragraph entity ID in English and Norwegian. The difficulty with that is if you're doing translation, you want things to diverge. You want to give clients the ability to diverge, and so you often want to reorder the paragraphs, you want to change the paragraphs, you want to add new ones, you want to delete some. If you do it with the way the paragraph supports out of the box, as soon as you delete it in one language, it's deleted for all the languages. It's a bit like going back to the menus. So with localization, you actually need a patch. And it's been worked on for the last 3 years, and it's nowhere near being committed yet. They've decided that they're not going to support this localization method for the classic widget, but for the experimental widget, they're still working on the patch for that. And that's because of ongoing changes with the content workflow in Drupal 8 that they want to support with the classic. So there is a patch, and we are using it. It seems production ready. Like I have reviewed it, and it is working. I've done all the edge cases. But yeah, you do need a patch to do it, and you have to be comfortable using that patch. One thing I will say, and with the patch, you can then uncheck the bundle at the top, and you can just translate the paragraph field. That will give you a different paragraph entity related to your node. So each language will be a separate independent entity from the other paragraph entities. Don't do this after you've added content, because we went down the way paragraphs told us to do, then we realized what the client needed, that they needed to be able to diverge. We changed how we did it, we applied the patch, we changed. They went, all our translations have disappeared. And they had added 13 different sets of them, and they've been doing it for 2 months. And they all went poof.
Backups?
No, they were there. They were still in the database. You just couldn't get to them. So it took a lot of, let's call it hacking, because it was hacking the database, to build back up those relationships and get it to work again. But yeah, definitely it's important to know whether you're translating a website or localizing a website, whether you're going to need to allow things to diverge or not, because if you change your mind later on, painful. And this was like a month before launch, and it took 2 weeks to sort. So translation configuration, I briefly mentioned. I don't have time. I did have slides on how to set up your schema YAML files to make this work. But basically, if your module is set up the correct way, then when you go to the settings page for that module, you get a translate button. And you can just translate the fields that are marked for translation on that field, on that settings form. And same with views. User interface translation, again, it hasn't really changed since Drupal 7. These are the system built-in strings. Just watch out that it's case sensitive. And if you want to contribute strings back up to the project, go to localize.drupal.org. So localization and how we did it in Drupal 8 then. So we had multiple versions of each language, so EN, GB, EN, UX, and so on. We also then had, so you might have seen in the screenshots at the very start that there was 2 drop-downs. There was one for region and there was one for language. So we had English in every region, but we didn't, like French wasn't in every region, for example. So we had a region drop-down where they could change their region. So if for some reason we identified where they were coming from in the world incorrectly, you could then go change and look at the content for a different market. So for each, we set up a region taxonomy. So we had our 4 regions, EMEA, North America, South America, and Asia Pacific. And then we configured with the language field, which languages were allowed to be associated with that taxonomy. So which languages were available in that region. And we also set the default language for that region. So if we couldn't figure out what language to serve them, or we didn't support the language that we determined for them, we would serve the default one. We used IP language negotiation to determine which country they were coming from. Then using the country module, we mapped each country to the regions. And that's an awful lot of checking for every single country in the world. But you only have to do it once, and that's fine. So there were the modules that we used, and then, as I mentioned, we had to have menus per region because of that inability to delete links and add links to just one language. You have to do it. It's either there for all languages in the menu or not. And then we created a custom module to do the region switcher dropdown. So that was the just a screenshot of the region taxonomy. So you can see that the default language for the region is your English in EMEA. Then we show the list of available languages that we're providing for that region, and then we started checking all the boxes for all the countries that were in the EMEA region. Useful info. Watch out for performance and APCU limits for your configuration cache. So Drupal 8 has this fast chaining cache backend, which I think it uses by default. So all your configuration is stored in this cache. This was an issue on Acquia. I haven't hit it on platform.sh. But basically, as we added more languages, we added more configuration, because we're translating the configuration. So we were adding more and more. And if you have one language, it's fine. 2, you've got double. 13, you've got an awful lot of configuration in your cache. And essentially, we hit the limits, and the site kept falling over. So as the user kept adding more translations, as they translated more taxonomies, more views, more menus, the site was getting slower and slower and slower. And this was the reason. We had to switch it to the database caching backend. The site was on Acquia, so they had Apache and Memcache. They wouldn't install Memcache, and we wanted PHP 7. So we had to do it to the database backend. So Redis all the way. Anyway, paragraphs, translation, localization, as I mentioned earlier, decide first what you're doing. Don't cause yourself all that stress of 2 weeks before launch doing it's still not working. All my translations have disappeared. After that fun time, we got the site back on track, we got the translations in. We then had another call from the client going, oh, the Russian has disappeared. I was like, what? I've definitely sorted this issue, it's nailed, don't tell me it's broken, something else has happened, and they've all gone poof again. What had happened was Chrome was very helpful for this particular editor. I said, would you like to translate this page? And she went, okay. And because of a bug in core, and I'm pretty sure it's still there, the user interface translation doesn't work. There is a checkbox that's meant to allow you to have have the form fields, labels, when you're editing and translating to appear in English or whatever language is the default language, and then be able to translate into Russian and French and so on. It didn't work, so we couldn't enable it. So this particular translator wasn't, fluent in Russian, or used to where the fields were on the page and just knowing what to put in. So she checked yes, translate this page for me, Google Chrome, thank you. And it translated all the content in the fields, and she hit save. So this kept happening, and all the Russian translations were going back to English because she had translated it through Google Translate. And the way I figured out that was happening was the English translation wasn't very good. So, caching and redirects, just watch out for it. I think, again, there's a patch in Drupal.org, or we had to use a patch, I think it's been committed now for Drupal core. But essentially, yeah, you don't want to cache so we're using the language codes in URL. If you go to columbianutritionals.com/, it will determine what language and redirect you to the language appropriate version of the site with the language code in URL. Make sure you don't cache the native domain without the language code, because otherwise everybody will be redirected for the next hour until your cache expires to the language for you. SEO. So I don't know what you guys use. In Drupal 7, we would have always used XML sitemap to create our XML sitemap. It doesn't support multilingual sitemaps according to the standard. So we would use the simple sitemap module now as a result. And then be sure to set up or to use the hreflang module, so you can tell Google and other search engines that you have alternative versions of your website in different languages, so you don't get penalized for duplicate content, particularly when you are doing a localized site with different copies of the English text. And lastly, design. We had 13 different languages. So the problematic ones for us ended up being German, because you like putting all your words together and making one big massive long word, and with this lovely design, boxes were broken and words were hyphenated where they shouldn't be. And then the opposite of that was Chinese and Japanese, really short characters, so things that like they were swimming in space. So yeah, you need to tell your designers at the start, this is what you're dealing with, so they can create a design that works in every use case. There are some of the modules that we use. The translation management tool is actually pretty nifty. If you're doing lots of translations and you have a client that's willing to pay for professional translators, and you can set them up through that module. There's a standard so you should be able to integrate with most translation companies' tools. I can't remember the name of the standard off my head, but it supports it. And you can send translation jobs. So when you finish your content, you say it's ready to be published, you can send it to the translation company. It gets into their system, they can translate it, they can send it back, you can review, publish. But even if you're not doing that, I would still use the module because it has a really nice page, it's called the sources page, where you can see every single node and you can filter it, it's a view. And you get a little tick box if it's been translated and a little X if it's not. So you can do that for every language. So for 13 different languages, it was really helpful to see which content had been translated, which content hadn't. And it just helped the translators manage what they had to do. And yeah, there's great documentation on Drupal.org. And questions? Thank you. Yes, Eric.
Yes, I have a question. For the configuration translation, do you sometimes experience that the editors of the site really want to change some of those strings? And basically, if you have those committed to Git, they should not really be able to change them. Is this something you allow, and if so, how?
We allow it on the content staging site.
Repeat the question.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So the question was, when you translate configuration, or editors want to translate configuration strings, but then they're not in Git, and presumably on the next import or deployment, the configuration is overwritten. We do allow translators to do it, but we tell them that they have to do it in the staging site, and we capture the configuration there and then deploy it. If it's quick fix, we allow them to do it in live, but they have to do it on staging as well.
I have a question.
Yep.
It's about Persian and Arabic. What's the status in Drupal 8?
What's the status of what? Sorry, I didn't catch it.
Of using Persian or Arabic?
Oh, it's straightforward enough. But they're just right to left. So I haven't had any issues with it.
You're very busy when you're working with it.
Yeah. It's again making sure that your design can accommodate a right-to-left language. Also, and this is for all languages, make sure if you're using Doodle fonts or some other font that they support all the character sets that you want to use. Eric.
Localization is not only about languages, but also formatting of currencies, numbers, dates. Has that also been taken into account when you talk about localization?
So the question was, localization is not just about the content, it's also about the formatting of numbers and dates and something else? Currencies. Yes, that is important, but this wasn't an e-commerce site, so we didn't have currencies, we didn't have prices. And dates, we did change the dates format for each language. So some of them were similar, but some of them were definitely not. And you can do that. You can just go to configuration date and time. I don't know what it's called in the configure, but you can go there and you can set up different formats for the different regions or different languages.
Can you show actual size that is live?
Yep. Sorry, the question was, can I show the site that's live? I'm getting used to this. I'm getting the mobile version of the website. That's how the resolution is. So this is English, EMEA. It should be North America. It's not for some reason, but
Translated into any languages or only Spanish?
yeah, because English and Spanish are only available in North America. If I go to Europe, then there are the languages: English, French, Dutch, Portuguese, Spanish, and Russian.
If you translate into the region.
Yeah, Asia Pacific. Then I should have Chinese and Japanese. Don't ask me which one is which. And then
The first was from China.
and then Latin America has Portuguese and Spanish. Would you like any particular region or translation? How about we put in German? I have to go back to Europe for that. Yeah. So
Can you find a very long word?
Easily.
I don't know whether it will work. So I could show you definitely where we hit it. But I'm not getting the mobile menu, or I'm getting the mobile menu. I'm not. It was part of the drop down. It was worse in the meta menu or whatever. But these boxes is usually where it arises.
Yes. You don't know, this one was good. Up, this up, no, we've done. More done?
Yep, stop.
Lifestyle, ernährung und
There's
Nahrungsergänzungsmittel.
a hyphen too many. That hyphen should be gone. But
Yeah.
Nahrungsergänzungsmittel.
This is a word.
Yes.
Nice word.
What he said.
Nahrungsergänzungsmittel.
So.
Food supplements.
And we also translated all the URLs, including those by views. So if you want to translate the views path, so I don't know if you can't really see it up here. Let's go to a view. If I can navigate in German, someone tell me where news is done. News and marketing. That
Yes.
sounds. So the URL is not just /news. So to do that in views, you actually have to set up an alias. So you set up an alias for that language and you redirect it to the /news. Yes?
I would prefer a drop-down menu in the top to choose the language in my site. Is that possible?
Well, the drop down to choose a language is...
Yeah, because you have to go to the menu and then sections.
But
You click. Can you get a sort of one click?
there is for desktop users, but this is showing the mobile version of the website. But if you come on desktop, there's two drop downs above.
Can you not just make that zoom a little bit out?
I don't think that will...
Actually, you could set up the screen resolution for the projector to be
Oh, well, it's getting...
well.
It's a little bit...
Yeah.
resolution set off.
Or just do responsible. Yeah.
It supports
No,
1200
before last.
Well, we did it.
Just
Yeah.
responsive, yeah. And put it to maybe 1,300. Sorry.
240.
240 is a bit narrow. No, we'll just do that. See what happens. No, that's not.
Not just 500.
It's not really,
Right.
no.
Yeah, you can drag it.
It's not,
Oh, no.
it didn't like that.
Because it's 58%.
It's the projectors.
Yeah. Alright.
No.
No, it's 58% again.
Oh, jeez. And if I change that, it goes back? Yay, I can. That's the way. Yeah, I could change my resolution perhaps. Or you could open up your laptops and go to it. Yes.
I have a question. One more question. If I write my site in English, I can. The Drupal would translate it automatically. I don't know.
No.
Don't need to write anything.
Nope.
Say I will translate it into Portuguese.
You need to translate it. You need to enter the translations. Sorry, the question was.
Yes, but this site translated automatically, or is it manually translated?
So the
The
question.
content, of course.
The question was whether the content in this site is translated automatically or manually, and it's translated manually. So
Okay.
they
So
work with
I have
translation
to
companies. And
write the whole thing in each, the content in each language.
yes, you need to write the content in each language for quality. Or you could use something like Google Translate. I wouldn't recommend going down that way.
I don't want to.
And there are translation companies that have tools. I don't know how good or bad they are.
Massachusetts.
Institute of
Ins-
Technology.
No, just Massachusetts. The state, Massachusetts. They have like Google Translate on their.
Yeah.
It's actually like an alternative if you don't wanna.
But professional translations,
Yeah.
translators actually use obviously machine assistant translation. So it's human, but they use translation memories, often
Yeah.
using patterns, and that helps them enormously. You know, it speeds up things. And by the way, there's something much better than Google Translate. It's DeepL. It doesn't work in that many languages, but it's so much better.
Okay.
DeepL.com. You should try that. It's not Norwegian yet. It's doing 6 or 7 languages, I believe. It's German actually.
Not Norwegian.
Yes.
Have you had ever with this site or with other multilingual one the need for going to a second language, meaning like if the content is not available on X language, then we show the epsilon based on preferences by the user.
So the question is, have I ever had on a site having to show a default language? If the language is not available, then showing another one?
Yeah, fallback plan.
Yeah. So the fallback plan, or on this site in particular, we determine their IP address, which gives us the country, which gives us the region. We know what languages we've configured for that region. And then if we don't support, or we can tell what their browser is using as well, what language from their browser. So we can either give them that language because we know that that's what they want, or we show them the default language for that region.
Okay.
So it falls back.
Always using the default languages.
Yeah. And there's the best I can do with the drop downs on the desktop on the screen now. And if I just change it, I don't have to hit save. It should just reload. No. So. Yes.
So when you create a new content in the field, you choose which language you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't have that site open. I have a different site in development open here. So I go content. This only has English and Irish. Go away. Add content. Let's just say landing page. This is in development in order to security update. So this is just defaulted in English. It's the default language.
Choose the language.
Yeah, and then afterwards, after it's created, there's. If I go back.
Where is it to use?
So there's a translate button here. And I can see they haven't translated that page to Irish, which is not surprising because they haven't finished doing their content yet. And you can just click add or edit if it's already there.
So you write in English first, and then you click add, and
So then you click add, and it should be pre-populated with the English content building blocks there, or paragraphs. So. Okay, well, if there's no other questions, thank you very much.